For today's review, we are looking at Atrocitus from the Blackest Night build wave. And since this is the build figure, he does not come with any accessories, nor does he have a data profile card. So to break down who this character is in a very simplistic way, from what I can remember of the character, he is the leader of the Red Lantern Corps. He's also the one that created the Red Lantern Corps using the blood of his fallen enemies. I don't exactly know how he did it, but he did. And if you think about the character, for example, from Injustice 2, because he was in the game, there is this cutscene where he does spit blood at Hal Jordan. A lot of it coming out of his mouth. It's like energy blood. It's not, I don't know if it's real blood or, the blood of rage, but yeah, that's the whole thing with the Red Lanterns. They represent the emotional spectrum of rage and hatred, and how most of their members join them is pretty much fueled by rage of something that is affecting them at that point of life, and that is how a ring, I guess, manifests or chooses them. It's not the same as the Green Lantern Corps. Now, in terms of his background, though, he loses his family from the Manhunter event. And I call it the Manhunter event because I don't actually know the proper name to this point of history. The Manhunters go rogue and pretty much start massacring innocent civilians across the universe. And his homeworld is one of the ones that suffered. He is one of the few survivors of that event. Basically, he is hell-bent on getting vendetta on the Guardians, because the Guardians are the ones that created the Manhunters. And the Manhunters were these android robots that were created to safeguard the universe, but they eventually went rogue. They were the task force that came before the Green Lantern Corps existed. So that's just a little background right there. And that's as much as I can remember for this character. I should probably do more research on him again just to remind myself, more of Atrocitus, because he is a very interesting character when it comes to the whole lantern side of things. He's a reoccurring character that you see a lot of, and the best example is in the Green Lantern animated series. He is one of the antagonists in that story. So there's the little lore bit right there. And now I'm just going to jump into aesthetics, because since he does not come with any accessories, let's dive into the details of this figure. Just like the Green Lantern figures, when it comes to Atrocitus' suit design, it is pretty much similar in that sense. As you can see, there is the red and black pattern for his suit since he is a Red Lantern. He does have his insignia right in the center right there. And for most of the black parts of his suit, it is textured. And that's because this sort of texturing that they adopted to the other Green Lantern figures afterward was created from this wave. So one of the other figures from this wave was Kyle Rayner, who introduced this body buck that we have seen reused a couple times with some of the other figures, and most recently this Hal Jordan reuses it. And as you can see, those texturing in the black areas of his suit are exactly the same, right? So it makes sense for the build figure, being Atrocitus, who also wears a lantern suit, to also keep that design element the same as well. And I really like the texturing here because it does make the black areas of his suit stand out more instead of just being this sort of flat plastic. So having the texturing is just a nice sort of touch to the design of the suit, so it doesn't look so plain. It gives it a sense of realism, which is something that I like. And as you can see on the backside, it's pretty much all textured. And for the red parts of this suit, now, the interesting thing here is that this collar piece was a separate piece. You had to pretty much connect this to these slots on his neck, but there was one issue where it doesn't stay on. So how I have this staying on right now is I used a little bit of super glue to basically glue it in, because you're not taking this off. If you take this off, it looks really weird. You'll see two portholes on the side of his shoulders, and it does not look right. So if you have this build figure and you always don't like the fact that this piece is popping off, use a little bit of super glue, because in this case, you want this to stay on. Now, as you can see, this is supposed to be like some sort of armor piece For his suit here, there is some pattern designs going on, and it could probably be panel lined. You could probably use some black ink to make this area look better than what it looks like right now, just being this plain plastic color. It'll add more sort of like a touch to it, I guess. That's the best way to describe it. And as you can see with the face sculpt, which is probably the best Atrocitus head sculpt as of now, because it's been a while since I've seen any Atrocitus figures ever made. Yeah, this head sculpt is really nice. I like the details on it. I like the teeth, how it's all painted. There are some QC issues with some of the copies that I've seen of this head sculpt where some of the teeth were not painted, which is unfortunate, but luckily for me, I got one where most of it is painted, right? So I do like his teeth being sharp and just creepy looking, and even the wrinkles on his forehead and his skin. I don't know what these holes are supposed to be on his face, but, you know, he is an alien that looks very demonic, so yeah, really loving the head sculpt here. And for his arms, he does have the gauntlet design here, as you can see, to represent the Red Lantern insignia, which I think is a pretty cool design for his gauntlets here for this side of the arm, as well as the other side of his arm, as you can see. And for his fist hand, he does have the Red Lantern ring, which I think is painted very lazy, because they could have painted it in a different shade of red, but they decided not to, so it just blends in with the rest of his hands, which is the problem that I did not point out with the Atrocitus figure when I made that review. As you can see with this figure, he does have that same problem as well with his ring finger. I don't know why they had to do it this way. They could have painted it a little bit different so it does stand out when you have him pose with, you know, using his ring or something, but in this case, it just doesn't look good being the way it is. Now, if you are a customizer, you could probably paint this yourself and make it a different shade of red so it stands out. Now, in terms of the insignia on the ring, it is kind of there. Usually the ring insignias have always been some of the worst parts on these figures because they sometimes just slap them together and just call it a day. So yeah, unfortunately, not the greatest right there. And for his legs, he does have leg armor. As you can see, there's some details right there all the way to the bottom of his feet. And that is pretty much most of the aesthetics for Atrocitus. It's very simple, but I think they did a pretty good job with this build figure because, you know, this is what he looks like in the comics. I don't know what else they can do to make him look crazier. Maybe if they gave him some glowing, you know, translucent effect parts that you can equip to him, like he's pretty much, you know, showing the rage energy coming out of him, I guess. But, you know, it's Mcfarlane. They're not going to go that far. So that is it for the aesthetics. Let's talk about the articulation. So as you can see with this figure, he is tall and his head does not want to look up, which is not great. And it's mainly because he'll run into this neck joint in the back. So having him look up is not going to happen. Having him look down, also not going to happen, which is not great. So his head sculpt, when it comes to doing the simple thing of looking up and down, is not going to work. Turning his head left and right, he can do that. Tilting his head, he can kind of tilt it. But as you can see, it's very restrictive. And I think it's because the joints and the way they sculpted the neck area is just not effective for the articulation for this head sculpt. So head sculpt articulation, it's not decent. It's actually just bad. Now for his arms, he can go out this far when it comes to spreading upward like that. He can swing his arms back and forth, kinda, if you do it like this. But as you can see, these shoulder pieces do get in the way, so that is not great. For the bicep articulation, he does have this swivel right here. And for his arm, he does have the double jointed, as you can see right there. And he also has swivel in his hands. And there is articulation right there with the wrists. So, you know, the arms are decent when it comes to articulation. And for his torso, He does have a little bit of movement, but as you can see, you're not really going to get much movement out of his upper torso. Leaning forward, not really effective. Leaning back, also not effective. So articulation with the upper torso is pretty bad. For the bottom half, which is covered by this layer piece, it barely wants to rotate as well. It seems like the joint is just really tight. So leaning forward, leaning back, it doesn't want to do any of that. So the articulation for the entire body portion of this figure on the top half is not great at all. Now for his legs, he can kick out this much. Not exactly a great kick. He also has double jointed in the legs. As you can see, he has the ability to articulate his feet, but it does run into this part of his boots or the armor piece right there. He can do this. He can also swivel, and he has toe articulation. And can he do the splits? Yes, he can. He can do a pretty good split. So that is pretty much all the articulation with the Atrocitus figure. You are not getting this guy into some crazy action poses, which is quite unfortunate. But yeah, that's pretty much as he can articulate. Now, since he doesn't come with any accessories, and he doesn't have a Red Lantern battery, what I like to do on my display when he's standing on my shelf is that I like to have him pose like this with the Red Lantern battery that came with the Atrocitus figure. So as you can see, it just goes right into that hand right there. And that's pretty much how I display him most of the time, because, you know, it would be nice if he had his own Red Lantern battery, but he doesn't. And hopefully we will see more Red Lantern characters get figures. I really do hope we at least see a few more before this line comes to an end. But yeah, that's pretty much what he looks like with the Red Lantern battery in his hand. And actually, just to show that up close, now I'm going to bring in some figures for some comparisons. And let's start off with Atrocitus being the only other Red Lantern character that we have in this line. So as you can see, he is taller than Atrocitus. It makes sense because he's a build figure. So there's the first comparison. Here he is next to the Hal Jordan with the many rings on his finger. Representation of evil right here. Here he is next to Parallax Sinestro. And as you can see, these two characters do go nicely together when they're next to each other, because they're both villains in this sense. And that's pretty much it for the Lantern characters. For the non-Lantern characters, here he is next to Thomas Wayne Batman. And for a comparison with a Megafig to show how tall this guy is, next to a Megafig, here is the final Bat suit. And as you can see, they're pretty much both almost the same height. I would say he's a little bit taller by him because I don't count the ears. So yeah, Megafig, build figure, they're not that far apart from size. But that is going to do for the comparisons. And if you found today's review of Atrocitus from the Blackest Night Wave informative, do give this video a like. If you want to subscribe to the channel for more action figure content and whatever else I do on here, it would be much appreciated. And with that said, take care, and I will see you in the next video.